But I always still knew my dream was to go to Canada, the land of my heroes.
Hello and welcome to the Heal Yourself with me, Sarah Dawkins podcast. We share people who've already healed themselves, along with health and wellness tips from myself.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Heal Yourself with me, Sarah Dawkins. My guest today is John A. Brink, who was born in 1940 in Nazi-occupied Holland and survived war, hunger and hardship before emigrating to Canada in 1965 with just $25.47. John founded Brink Forest Productions in 1975 and is now North America's leading value-added wood manufacturer. At 84, John leads the Brink group of companies and hosts On the Brink, a top 1% global podcast. A fierce advocate for ADHD awareness, John is also a philanthropist, pledging $1 million to the College of New Caledonia. His achievements earned him the Order of BC, an honorary doctorate, and the King Charles III Coronation Medal in 2025. So welcome, John.
Nice to be here, Sarah. Look forward to our podcast.
Absolutely. I'm so pleased you could join me. You've come from very challenging beginnings to where you are now. And to look at you, nobody would believe that you are 84. So could you talk us through how you've got to where you've got to from where you've come from? What was key in your life to get you to being the physically, mentally well and healthy gentleman you are?
Yeah, interesting question, Sarah. My birthday I was born in November the 1st, so my 85th birthday is in a week and a half. I was born in northeastern Holland in November the 1st, 1940. And as we all know, that was just before the Second World War started in affecting Europe. And in particular, talking about my family, my mom and dad were married in 1938, and they were in love. They had rented this beautiful little apartment, and so my dad was working in a lumber mill, and so they were the happiest people in the world. And and very quickly had a boy and a girl, and then my mom was pregnant with me, so to be born November the 1st, 1940. And then what happened, the dictator Adolf Hitler decided that Poland should become part of Germany, and it was obvious that he would go beyond that. So my dad, in April of 1940, was drafted into the Dutch army, and the last time they saw him and heard from him was just before the bombing of Rotterdam. He was seen in Rotterdam just before the bombing started, and for 5 years, my mom and the family did not know if he lived or died. And so things were very, very difficult for my mother, starting off with the first two kids, obviously very young, still 1 and 2 years old, and then pregnant with me. And so things became very, very difficult for her. And everybody else around her had the same issues. So everybody was in a survival mode. And the first thing that I remember was 1943, when I was about three and a half years old, was with the Allied forces had started bombing the war infrastructure of the Germans. And again, visualize northeastern Holland. We were 10 or 15 minutes from the German border, and on a lot of the planes, daytime, nighttime bombing would fly over our region. And I can still even now remember the sound of hundreds of bombers. flying overhead day and nighttime. And then my mom would take us outside on a deck behind our house, because she felt safer outside than inside. And in the distance, we could see the German cities burning during the bombing, and the bombers coming back. It was an unbelievable happening, and to us in particular at that point. So something that I will never forget. And then the other point that I remember was the hunger year of 2004, when 1944, when the Germans cut off all the food supply to our regions in Holland in particular, and it was hunger. And I still can feel now, nearly 80 years later, when I was 4.5, that the feeling of hunger. And so the kids, my brother, my sister, myself, would go every morning with gunny sacks into the railroad yards and pick up anything edible and burnable. And so that's and the reason that we did as kids, because the Germans wouldn't shoot us, they would just boot us one in the back, and then we just came back the following day. But I remember that part. And then the other part that I remember well, the winter of 2004, the winter of 1944 to 1945 was the coldest on record. And I remember the little room that we heated in our house with a little heater in the middle, and we'd be sitting around there, and you'd be burning in the front and cold in the back. And so I remember that part. And then the next one that made a change to my life is that on April the 12th, 1945, we were liberated by the Canadian Army as part of the Allied forces that landed in Normandy in the summer of 1944. The Americans, the Canadians, and then the UK soldiers that liberated part of Europe. And so the Canadians went north through France, to Belgium, and to Holland at great expense to lives that were lost in Normandy and along the way. And so on April the 12th, 1945, the Canadian Army liberated us in northeastern Holland. And it made such an impression on me that I always knew from that point forward, when I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I did. And so that always stayed with me, and still very much part of my life, even today. So the memories of all of that, and and that changed and affected my life, even to the extent that even now still, and not too far away from where we are now, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, it is the Remembrance Week of November the 11th. And I always make it a point to speak to at least 2 or 3 schools for the last 12 years to what does it mean, and why the 2 minutes of silence, and why it is important for us and for them, the young persons that are listening to me. And I've been doing this for about 12 years, and it's always amazing to me to share with them. I was there, how quickly things can change, and how important it is to appreciate every day that we have in this beautiful country and in this beautiful continent of North America. And so that to me is always very, very important. And it's always amazing that kids going through high schools, in particular from the low grades to the higher grades, initially people said, well, you will never keep them quiet. Well, you can hear a pin drop, so it's important.
It is very important, and I think that history needs to be passed down so that we don't forget what's happened. So if the children understand it, I think as well, it also gives them compassion for people of your generation who've been through that and lived through it, but to make them think as well about going without food, without heat, without warmth, and And for them to even ponder what that might be like, because I imagine for the most of them, they couldn't understand what that would feel like.
Exactly. Yeah, so important, and especially it makes us appreciate all the things around us, like family, and appreciating our country, and the culture, and all the other things, and understanding it, why it is so important, and especially now as we sit here in podcast around the world, is saying that we look at the Middle East, all the challenges there. We look at the Ukraine comes to mind, and Eastern Europe, and a lot of other places on earth, and dictatorships like Russia, China, Venezuela, Cuba, and North Korea. I can go on and on and on and on. And so we are so immensely fortunate in North America in particular, that every day when I get up, I used to get up at 5:30 in the morning, and I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And all the things that I'm doing is that the first thing that I do, I go outside and I say, I'm in paradise. And and that part is important. And, so we are so lucky. And then the other part is important to me. Give back to your community, be involved, be proactive, and then count our blessings that we have.
I love that. And that is a whole mindset in itself, isn't it? To be grateful for what we have, because we could always have more, but equally we could always have less.
Exactly. And a lot of people do, right? So.
Yes. And I'm listening to your story, and you have built such a lot of resilience and a positive mindset to see the good in the world, and to be able to give back to your community as part of your gratitude practice. So you've talked about getting up in the morning and being so thankful, and going outside and enjoying the beautiful day. What would your normal routines look like throughout the day, throughout the week?
So usually what I do, Sarah, is I get up at 5:30 in the morning, as I indicated. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. So, and then again, not bragging about things, but I'm still very active at 85 a week from now. In all the things that I do. I have probably 10 different companies, and I'm still managing most of those with a team of people, obviously. And then the other part that I do is I'm an author, as you know. I'm a speaker, as you are, presenter. And then the other part is become a big part of my life is I'm a very, very active podcaster as well, both hosting and guesting. And I love it. So most of my day, the other part is that health, fitness, and being aware of your body is very, very important. So I'm, my wife is a vegetarian, and up to 2008, I was somewhat, but not quite listening to her as good as I should and could have. And so then something happened that triggered my life and made a change. Is I had a case of diverticulitis. And for most people that may around the world not fully know, I'm not a doc, obviously, I'm just talking from personal experiences, that diverticulitis, I always say if it hurts on the right side, it could be appendix. If it's on the left side, it could well be diverticulitis. And you have to attend to that. Usually the doc, and again, I'm not a doc, but I read and hear, is that the doc would suggest to eat more greens and change your diet around, and that will help. In my case, it breached. And so the toxins went through my body, very extremely painful, and you have only a limited amount of time before things become extremely serious, because it starts attacking the other organs. And so I made my way somehow to where my mills are, and And so, and one to my doc was also a personal friend. And as soon as he saw me, he said, "Get to the hospital right now." So I did. And I got an operation there, and they took 20 centimeters out of my colon. And the following morning, the doc said to me, "You came this close." That was a message to me. And I started working on diet, started to become more proactive. And I used to call myself 80-20. I'm probably like a 90-10 now, if not more. And the other part that I did is become more serious. And this was in 2008, when I started recovering in 2009, 16 years ago. I became more serious about personal fitness and understanding my body. So I did before that the same as a lot of other people did. At the end of the year, go through this. I'm going to do this, that, blah, 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 blah. And then the last thing is I'm going to buy a membership to the gym. And then 2 weeks later, you can find 100 reasons why you're too busy to go to the gym. And so, but I knew I had to involve a trainer. So that's what I did. Started to become more proactive in diet, understanding my body. And then, so I started working out with somebody in a serious way, 3-4 times a week, to going to the gym and working hard. And then after about 6 years, somebody came up to us and he said, "Hey, John, have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Right, you." I said, "Oh my God, why not?" And so I did. So by then, I already was in my mid-60s. And I started working towards competing. And then in my early 70s, I started competing in Northern British Columbia. Bodybuilding and physique came in second, bodybuilding, third in physique. The next one was provincial, did the same. And the next one was nationals and the Arnolds. And then COVID came, obviously, and then everything changed, slowed down a little bit. And now today, again, I'm working on, going to the gym. And even today still, I will go to the gym again 4 days a week. Working very, very hard and working towards competing on the Arnolds in 2026. And I wrote a book about it, Living Young, Dying Old. And this is a copy of the book. And that's a picture of me. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And so it's all about, it's not so much about the bodybuilding, but it's all about quality of life that is critically important. And that means diet and exercise. And that's the most important part. And that's what I do now as part of my life. So I'm busy. And then the other part I should add to it as well is that it took me a long time to figure out, academically, I was not a success story, Sarah. And so when I was in Holland, I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And people said, even the teachers said, John, you just don't have it well. So get a job where you can work with your hands because you're just not smart enough. And so, but I always knew I was just as smart as all the others. But, and then at age of 12 and a half years old, I failed the 3rd time, grade 7. And people said to my parents, "What are you going to do with this guy?" And some people said, "Send him to the mentally challenged school." They said, "No, we're not going to do that." So they sent me at 12 and a half years old. My dad was in Lumber. He had a friend that had a furniture factory and saying, "Let's make him a furniture maker." And so that's what he did. And so I went to the furniture store. But I always still knew my dream was to go to Canada, the land of my heroes, and to then build my own lumber mill and show me, not anybody else, me, that I was just as smart as anybody else and I can do it. And so that's what I did in July of 1965 with a suitcase, 3 books. I wanted to start with nothing. A suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I wanted to go to British Columbia, because that's where they're growing all the trees. And so I took the flight into Montreal, came off the train there. Came off the plane, went on the train across Canada, 4 days, 5 nights. My God, that is a long way. So anyway, came to Vancouver, went to the immigration office, couldn't speak English, didn't know soul, didn't have a job. And fortunately, there was a German fellow there, and I could speak some German. I told him I want to build a lumber mill. He said, go to northern British Columbia. Prince George is the city. That's where we are today. He is still 60 years later. And so I came off the bus here, the Greyhound, 12 hours from Vancouver. And so I had my suitcase. I had 3 books, 2 sets of clothes. I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47. And so but what I did have, attitude. I'm always, even at the worst of times, I'm always positive. And if you're negative, stay away from me. And then the second one is passion. Whatever I do, I give it 125%. And the other one is work ethic. And as I already say, I work harder than anybody else. And what will follow then is success. And so that has always been part of my life, and started from a cleanup man here, walking an hour and a half to the mill where I was a cleanup man. Fairly quickly, I was promoted to a lumber pilot and then a foreman. And within a year and a half, I was superintendent of the mill. And even that didn't go fast enough for me. And then I became part owner of a mill, small little mill. If I worked there for 5 years, I would get part of the ownership. And so where was the mill, John? It was in Watson Lake, Yukon Territory. And for the people watching us, if we look at the map of North America, we see Alaska. Right next to that is the Yukon Territory. It's a place, they say, tell me what it is like. And some people ask me about Holland. What's the climate like? I said, the rain is colder in the winter. That's what is Holland. In the Yukon, I saw it snowing in July. You don't know if it is late or early. And I've seen it 62 below zero. But I was there for 5 years, and then at some point I sold it all, gave it all away more or less for $1, and then started things over again. And Prince George started my mill, and last week, actually, I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago, October the 1st, I celebrated in a way 50 years that I started the company Brink Force Products with 3 employees, worked as much as 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, as long as I could physically stay awake, and then gradually build it up. Yes, I did build my mill and a number of other things. So today we have 10 different companies, and and that's kind of what I do. And then the other part that I was going to mention to you, which was even then, a lot of people said to me, oh, you're so successful and all. I didn't feel that way, even not then, until I walked into a bookstore here in Prince George, and I picked up a book. I have the actual book right here. I'm going to show it to you in a second. I picked it up. I don't know why I picked it up. And I read it. The title is Driven to Distraction, and written by Dr. Hollowell. Medical doctor, professor, has written 18 books. And the more I looked at the book about Dr. Hollowell, he is ADHD and has dyslexia. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And so, so I wrote in the book, this is the actual book that I picked up, January 1997. And I wrote in Dutch because it was implied that it was a mental deficiency of some sort, and I was ashamed of it. I said, now I finally know who I am. January 1997. And so the more I read about it, the more I went through Google and understanding it, the more I understood, at least in my mind, I said, it's a superpower. And so today, when people talk to me about saying, how do you do all the things that you're doing? I'm I have 1 million subscribers on YouTube, more than 1 million subscribers. And then at the same time, I do hosting and podcasting. My podcast, I am close to 500 of where I am hosting, and then guesting about 200 or so, I don't know. And then I wrote a book about that. I felt I had an obligation to share my experience about ADHD. I wrote a book about that, ADHD Unlocked. Very successful, actually, and I speak about it. I incorporate it in some of my presentations. And more than anything, Sarah, I have an obligation to share with others. That's why podcasting is so important for me. It is the new media that explodes as we speak around the world. And I believe will become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm proud to be part of it and sharing in it. And to me, it's very, very important, especially sharing some of the challenges along the way that I've had. And I'm working on another book that will be coming out next June. And so I've done so far 5 books, starting with Against All Odds, not about how successful John is, all the challenges along the way. And the other one that I'm doing is You Can. And that part is important for me.
You've talked about doing so much, John, so many hours in your exercise, in your work. What does downtime look like?
Yes, a very, very good question, Sarah, because that part is very, very important, because entrepreneurship, very demanding on relationships, and a lot of people think that if you're an entrepreneur and in business, you spend all your time bringing money to the bank and planning holidays. Not so. It takes a price, and you have to have a good partnership to work with you on that. So in my case, in particular now, what I do, actually today it's Friday, and so it's by us here 9 o'clock, between 9:30 actually in the morning. At 2 o'clock this afternoon, I fly to the south to Victoria or North Saanich on Vancouver Island. We have a place. My wife stays in Victoria or North Saanich. We have 7 horses, and we have a riding arena. And so I spend my time on the island enjoying our horses and all the other things that we do and relaxing. And then on Monday, I fly back to Northern British Columbia and do all the other things that I do. At the same time, I work on some of my projects when I'm in Victoria, but the focus is more than anything on relaxing and doing different things together with my wife.
I love that, because downtime really is important as well, isn't it? We can't just keep go all the
Critical.
time.
Absolutely critical.
Thank you. And over the years, because you've been so busy, so successful, what support have you needed or has come your way through your work, through your challenges, through your lifestyle?
It's a pretty lonely battle in a lot of cases, Sarah. I'm still optimistic. I'm not negative at all, but the reality is that, when things have become very, very difficult, then for a lot of people that are hoping you do well, but most of them don't necessarily, and for whatever reasons. And so I'm a realist. I still stay very involved in communities. I stay very, very proactive, and I will not become negative. And so I've gone through all the ups and downs along the way, personal, physically, as well as financially and in businesses. But I always stay the course, and I always stay optimistic. I still get up at 5:30 in the morning. I still make my bed. I still believe I'm always late. I'm the first one at our main office. I'm usually the last one to leave, and I will stay positive, and I give back to the community. No matter what happens, I give back to the community. And podcasting in a way is part of that. And I really, really, really enjoy that and always look forward to it.
It's a great way to meet people, isn't it? And also to learn more. You know, every guest I have, I learn something from, and there's always a big takeaway.
Yes, no, I agree with that.
You've aged so well. You are so fit. You are so healthy. What do you believe that it's your genetics that's helped you become who you are today? Do you believe it's your mindset? Is there a bit of both? What would you believe is your biggest asset to get to where you are today?
Attitude, passion, work ethic, but will follow is success. And so for me, so a little bit tongue in cheek, but with me failing grade 3 and failing grade 7 3 times and being told that unfortunately John just does not have it, he will not amount to much in life other than becoming a laborer. I'm proud of that actually, and saying that do not give up, believe in who you are, stay the course, stay positive, never, never, never give up. And so that's what I do. If there is an inspiration that I like to share with others, that obviously genetically there must be something that is helpful, but I believe in most cases there has been. I've been in these situations where physically I was not doing as well, overweight for one. For a period there, I was drinking more alcohol than was good for me, and diet was not as good as it could be, and so thanks to my wife in a lot of cases, and you know, so at one point in my life, I was drinking too much, and I was on prescribed on Xanax, and I was smoking cigarettes, and then my wife hit me with a 2x4 across the head, and she dumped me. Oh my God. And so that kind of got the message to me that I had to smarten up. And so I did. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking. That was in 1992. God knows how many years, 30 years ago. So more than 30 years ago. And so the hardest thing for me was to stop it, although it was Xanax. And so, but I stopped all of that in a week, and, you know, so, and then started to look more at diet and then fitness in a way. And, but all of that came late for me, well into my 60s. Same as writing books. And that's why because people say, no, I'm too old for this, and I'm too old for that, and I can't do this, and I can't. Yes, you can. That's why I'm writing the other book. You can. And the most important part is not age is a number. It's quality of life. And that means physically, mentally, and staying the course, you know, and then give back to the community, be involved. And in terms of business and money, that's all secondary stuff, you know, so, but I like building businesses, and but I love writing books, and obviously I've been doing good at it, and I love podcasting and giving back to the community. The businesses are doing well, but that's not what it is about for me. It's the most important part is that having that feeling of accomplishment and then helping others, and that's why podcasting is such an amazing media, so that as you and me are having this discussion, that people around the world are watching us. And I believe that's amazing.
It truly is about our mindset. If we believe we can, we absolutely can. But, you know, going back to you failing the 3rd and the 7th grade at school, you'll have that teacher's opinion of you in your mind that, you know, you're no good, you're never going to be anything. And that takes a lot of inner work to overcome that, to get to the place to be able to say, actually, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be good at it. And I think there's too much push for people to be in academia. Yes, we do need academics, but we also need hands-on people, you know, skilled, trained laborers, service personnel, plumbers, electricians. like yourself in the wood industry. We need people like that. We don't want a world full of academics. We need people who can work with their hands and enable, in working with our hands, we're able to help others and give to others and give back to the community through that hands-on work.
Yeah, the interesting part, a good observation, Sarah. The interesting part about it is that, with my academic performance was not all that good because of ADHD. The interesting part about it is that what ADHD did for me, there is no question in my mind, is the sooner you understand it, the better. Like in my case, it took me till I was 62 before I was diagnosed, actually. And so the younger somebody is, that, and it's not a liability. In fact, it can be the other side of it. So for me, I've always been very good at numbers, even in grade 3 and grade 7. I was always a good writer, but because of dyslexia in combination with ADHD, I was not a good reader. And then, but the other part, that obviously I've done well on my writing. And then the other part about it was that I'm a strategic thinker, and I always look forward 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And so I'm very, very good at that. Hence, I've been very successful in business, but also on number of boards of directors of different companies. And I've always been very, very involved in community. And so it was, ADHD to me has been an asset, not a liability.
Thank you, John. And for the people who are listening, could you share one tip that they could take away today to help them overcome the fear of aging?
Start understanding your body, understand your diet, understand what makes it click, be proactive. And if you're overweight or anything like that, I'm not a doc, obviously, but what I did is saying that become proactive. Move your body. Your body is meant to move. Combine them all. And then mindset, be positive. Attitude, passion, work ethic, but will follow, guaranteed, is success.
Wonderful. And so profound, but yet so simple when you think about it.
Exactly.
Thank you. And where can people find you, John?
John A, as in Aaron or Adam, Brink, BRINK.com. And all the stuff that we do is right there.
Wonderful. And are your books there on your website too?
Correct.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing your life, your health history with my audience on Heal Yourself with Sarah Dawkins.
Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast with anyone who you think will benefit. And can you leave me a review wherever you've listened to it to help me reach more people? Thank you.